Hi, Kimberly. We have something in common, don't we? We're from Dayton, Ohio.
Yes, we are.
And we are women that God has given us a plan and a purpose for out of our passion, not only for Jesus Christ, but what He's called us to. So I just want to spend a little time with you because I like to just talk with powerful women who God has given an assignment to.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
your husband was in the Pentagon, 9/11.
Yep,
And God spared him.
he did. And for a while, my husband suffered survivor's remorse because some of the guys that he was supposed to meet with that morning did not make it. And I struggled with, I guess what happened in our community and a lot of families that suffered that day. And it changed me. It changed me in two powerful ways. One was, as I was sitting there on the couch with my family that evening, I just thought, could this happen? And my very second thought was, never again. And I committed to do everything in my power to make sure my children remained free. And then as the time passed, the second thought came to me. We could focus on the horrible part of that day. My husband could focus on why he didn't die, or he could focus on why did the Lord spare his life. And I could focus on how could this happen, or I could focus on how am I going to be the change in the world that I want to see.
So you had some choices.
I did.
And kind of brought the rubber to the road, or we're right on it now. We had a choice of what we could do. We could be devastated and run and hide and worry, or we could turn around and say, God has given me a purpose and a plan. I'm going to figure it out.
I wasn't going to be paralyzed. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I was abused as a child. I was sexually abused and I was physically abused. And that also molded me. And I think one of the things that we are not telling our daughters and women, especially today, is that being victimized doesn't mean that you're a victim. You choose whether or not you're going to be a victim. And what we need to do is empower and strengthen and lift each other and help them realize that, yes, this is a part of you. It will always be a part of you, but that doesn't mean that it defines you. It means that you decide who's going to be the victor. I'm going to get past whatever this is. And I think that prepared me for other events that happened in my life. So when things came my way, I'm like, okay, am I going to be a victim? Am I going to be paralyzed? Am I going to hide my head under the pillow? Or am I going to stand up and say, okay, I'm going to be the victor and I'm going to take control of this situation?
So that was an event. It was not your identity.
That's right.
Who you were as a woman, who God had made you as a female, and now a believer who had married. You have 8 children.
I do.
And God put you in, married your husband in a life and a career in the Air Force. And then this tragedy happened. So we do have a choice.
We do. Every time we have a choice. And I think, honestly, that's one of the inspirations to founding Moms for America, the organization that I founded, is, I saw how women were being belittled, being convinced that they were perpetual victims, that men were the enemy. And I'm like, why are we telling them? My sons, I have 6 sons. They're not the enemy. Jesus Christ was a man. He's not the enemy. God our Father is a man. He's not the enemy. So those are choices. And the men in our lives, the men in our sphere of influence, we're the ones that decide what level of standard that we're going to expect from them. And we don't have to be victims, nor do we ever remain a victim. We decide in whatever circumstance comes our way, we are going to decide what the standard is going to be and what we're going to be with whatever the adversity is. We can rise to it and overcome whatever the challenges are and be better for them, or we can stay in them.
I love that, because God, we are, before God's eyes, men and women are equal.
That's
He brought
right.
them here on earth to use their giftedness and their passions. And I think sometimes we as people, and even some churches, have kind of mixed that up, and yet God uses everybody in their giftedness, and He gave you a passion, and then this thing happened all along the way. He didn't waste any part of your pain.
No.
Any part of it
He
to
works
build,
through us.
and He's always working on the next thing to fulfill that in our lives. So through Moms for America, I know after 9/11, you decided to do some investigating, and you wrote a book.
I did.
I want to
I
talk
did.
a little bit about that.
Well, the first thing I did was I wanted my question answered. How did we get here? And right around the same time, there were three things that happened at the same time that led to the book, which is really my journey of discovery. And the first thing that happened was 9/11. The second thing happened right around the same time. One of my sons developed a physical condition which kept him from being able to go to public school. And so God intervened again, and I went to the school board and I asked about homebound. And they said, well, this sounds like it could be a long-term condition. Homebound is for short-term. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do for my son's education? And she said, well, have you considered homeschooling? Now, anybody who knows anything about public schools knows that that's like a crazy thing to happen, that she would even suggest such a thing. And then just like 2 months before, a woman had moved into my neighborhood who homeschooled, and she had been talking to me about it. And so like all of those things kind of came into play. And then the third thing that happened is I was invited to a town hall meeting by a friend. And the town hall meeting was talking about taxes, and whatever the speaker was talking about, I can't remember specifically, but he asked the question, it had to do with the topic, how many representatives do you have? I was living in Virginia at the time. He said, I don't know how many representatives Virginia has because I don't live here. And I raised my hand and I said, well, I don't know how many representatives we have, but I know how many senators we have. And everybody in the room laughed. And I couldn't figure out what. Ha 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 ha, you know. And I went home and I told my husband, and I'm like, what did I miss? And he's like, honey, every state has 2 senators. And I got so mad, and I was like, why don't I know this? Why didn't I learn this in school? And so all 3 of those things just set me on this trajectory of, I was like, I had a passion for everything about American history and heritage. I studied the Constitution. And one day my daughter came home from school, and I was talking to my other kids. We started homeschooling all of the children at that time. I homeschooled my son for 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm sold. I brought them all home. So we're sitting there and we're talking about the Constitution, and my daughter was still finishing her year in school, and then she came home, homeschooled the next year. And she came in and she's listening to me talking to my kids about the Constitution, and she said, well, the Constitution's not for everybody. That it was just for land
Not for
owning.
everybody.
No, it was for land owning, male, heterosexual. You know, she's going on this diatribe, and I'm like, what? And I said, have a seat, honey. And I asked her, I said, where did you get this one? Well, that's what they teach us in school. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so not only was I lied to, but now they were changing the whole entire story. They stripped me of my education about history and our heritage, and then they're completely changing it for my children.
And it's in our public schools right now. And they're
is.
changing all of the curriculum or
Right.
Christian beliefs, ethics, and
They're
everything.
taking family
They're
out, everything that
pulling
supports family freedom, and God is being ripped out.
So,
But they want you to be moral and not shoot up schools.
yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Go to school, don't learn anything about being moral, but when you come and you bring a gun or a knife or threaten anybody, then you're a horrible human being. So what do you expect?
And so we again have a woman who God has placed a call in her life
That's right.
by circumstances, details, bringing people in her life, and you're talking about your kids.
Yeah.
You're talking about their future. You're talking about our Christian beliefs and our values. And this woman has decided to stand up. Kimberly Fletcher, Moms for America. You wrote the book, Women, the
America's Last Best Hope. Yep.
Say the title again.
Women, America's Last Best Hope.
So when you rile a mama bear for her kids, and there's been injustice, you're going to figure it out.
Right.
You're going to find a way. You're going to protect your kids, and you're going to do something about not only in your home,
But in your sphere of influence.
your
That's
sphere of influence, which, Kimberly, it was your home,
That's
maybe your city, maybe your school, but you decided to take it a little bit further.
Yeah, that was a God thing. So I'm sitting in my kitchen one day, and I'm sitting there peeling potatoes.
On the kitchen table, getting ready for dinner.
Yeah, peeling potatoes. And in the living room, my kids were listening to Schoolhouse Rock. And if you guys remember those, if you're 50, you would remember these. But when I was growing up, Schoolhouse Rock was how you passed all the tests. These little cute little animated segments. And my favorite one was Bill on the Hill. I'm just a Bill on Capitol Hill. And so
That's really good.
Yeah. So I watched them religiously, and I learned about veto and everything I knew about the Constitution. I learned from Schoolhouse Rock and from my mom. And so my kids were listening to it, and as I'm peeling the potatoes, I suddenly hear this song in the background, "The Great American Melting Pot." And I'm peeling the potato and I almost sliced my finger because I totally forgot about the Great American Melting Pot. And I hadn't heard the term for so long. But when I was growing up in school, the Great American Melting Pot was what everybody talked about. And my kids are sitting there singing a song, and I'm like, I wonder if they know. And so I asked my kids, I brought them in and I said, do you guys know what the Great American Melting Pot is? And my son, Jordan, who just is a food fetish, he had all kinds of ideas. And they were all giving their different takes, you know. And then Cassie, she was 16 at the time, and she told me exactly what the Great American Melting Pot was. And I'm like, yes! And I said, what teacher told you, honey? And she said, oh, I didn't learn that in school, I learned it in Sunday school. And I was like, oh! And so that's when I realized that there is this huge movement to change who we are. And the discovery, the journey of discovery that I had led me to not only write the book, but right around that same time, the Lord put it on my heart that I needed to start a national organization. Now, I knew nothing about a national organization.
Here's a woman that's sitting at her kitchen table. She's peeling the potatoes. And God said yes.
Yeah.
And He laid it on your heart.
It was
And
crazy.
You know what's I'm so excited about? You decided to obey. Even though you didn't know how, you didn't know when, you didn't know the steps, and you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, right, God. Or, yeah, right, God.
Well, there was a conversation, I will tell you, a very open, clear conversation that I had with the Lord, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know why He would ask me. And so for 2 weeks I kept asking that question. Why me? There's so many other people that know so much more and would do such a better job and have done it before. And finally one day He just put it on my heart. Yes, but they'll do it their way, and I want it done my way. And He knew I would have to do everything on my knees and come to Him, and I would do it His way. And that's the way we have run this organization from the day that it started. November 11th, was it? 2004. And we've been around. This year's our 15th birthday. This November will be 15 years for Moms for America. And we have had major impact by doing small and simple things. And it's amazing when I share what I learned with other moms, when I just simply validate what they already feel in their hearts to be true, that what they're doing as mothers is the most important thing they'll ever do, and then I add the fact that it's the greatest act of patriotism that they'll ever perform for their country, their eyes light up and they get excited.
And biblically, it's what God stands
That's
for
right.
in human life.
Who did He call? He called Esther. He could have called anyone. He called Esther to save a nation. Who did He appear to? Who did Jesus Christ appear to first when He was resurrected?
A woman.
Exactly. Who brought Him into the world?
Who did He meet at the well? Who
That's
went back
exactly
and saved the whole city?
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
Right.
He used
relies
women
on
all
us.
through His ministry, Priscilla and Aquila.
That's right.
And He put passion in women's hearts to move, walk in obedience, and be an ordinary person, to do extraordinary things in extraordinary ways.
We have a powerful influence. And the honest truth of it is, there are two entities that know it. God the Father, and of course the Son, and the devil. And the devil is going to want to destroy anything that God created. And if I was the devil, and I wanted to destroy and take down a nation, I'd go after the women. I'd launch a full-out assault on them, convince them that they're worthless, convince them that motherhood is secondary to career, convince them that they have to have a job and a title to be of value, convince them that if they are working, that they should devote all of their time to that and make their children second in their lives, convince them that their husbands are down or have them downtrodden.
Or even say that they have to stay home and not be used for anything in the value of what God has put on their heart. What if you would have listened to the evil one and said, I can't do it. Our value, right. I can't do this.
Who would?
And God had given you a clear direction and a call of which, what if you would not have obeyed?
I thought about that question, honestly. In fact, I thought about that question during the time that it was happening. And exactly how you kind of reacted is how I felt. Just the first thing I thought was, what if Esther had said no? What if Esther had said it's too hard? What if Esther had said I can't do this? And I thought, if not me, who? And at that moment, it was like this flood of energy just came over me. And like I knew in my heart and soul that God called me to this before I was even born. And I agreed to it. And He prepared me for it.
Before the beginning of time, of which God
Yeah.
has totally always exist, He knows where we're going to be at any point in time.
That's right.
I
He's not gonna leave
did
us
not
alone.
know I was going to talk to you today. But God knew.
God knew.
God knew. So He's put this passion in your heart, and you're saying women need to take back their homes.
That's right.
Women need to take back
They need
their
to take back
city.
their identity first.
Identity.
Take back your identity as daughters of God. You are queens. You are princesses. He is relying on you more than ever because He knows the powerful influence that you are in your home, with your children, with your husband, in your sphere of influence, and everywhere you go, in your church, in your community, in your school, in the nation, simply by standing for truth where you are. You have no idea as a mother, as a woman, how powerful you are in influencing the country simply by setting the standard of society, humanity, and decency. We do that, and we have got to stop allowing society to lower the standard. We need standard that society to lift to
Well,
us.
how our homes go is how our nation
right.
will go. And it's time to turn it around. And so God has laid it on your heart. We're in crisis. We're in crisis in
Crisis
in our Constitution. We're in
That's right.
crisis in legislation that's being passed that's unbiblical, not truthful, and it's going to destroy people. Actually destroy people. So it's time to turn this around.
Yeah.
Through prayer.
Yes.
Through
Oh my gosh, the
standing.
power of prayer. And then when God directs you, go. Have the faith to take that step. There's that third Indiana Jones movie, where he's going on that big trek and he's following all of these paths, and he gets to the note close to the final one, and it says take a leap of faith, and there's this big huge chasm, and then all the other clues worked, and so he's like, okay, so he closes his eyes and he takes the leap of faith, and then this bridge that he didn't see,
But
that
he
was
had to
blended
take
in,
the step.
But he had to take the step, and God will not leave us alone.
Yes.
He didn't bring us
No.
here for us to flounder. He brought us here for a mission. He brought us here to prepare the way for His Son to return, and we're the ones preparing the way. And what I tell moms, I think that is one of the most empowering things, is I remind them what they already know. Again, we already know that this is not a war for outcome, because we already know God wins.
Yes.
This is a war for casualties. And what we are called to do
yes.
is limit the number of casualties. Will our children be casualties?
Our children's children.
That's right. That's
So
what this fight is
one
about.
of the ways we know right way, we just talked about your home, take back your
That's
home,
right.
teach biblical principles, showing that example, having your children come to know the Lord, you're praying for them constantly,
Yep.
and assuredly for their future and God's will for them and their plan. And then how can we do it on a larger front? Well, since we're in crisis, I would say women are called right now, because we're so busy with our children. We have an election coming up,
Oh, yes.
and we
Yes.
can turn our nation
One
towards
election.
God
So
by one vote at a time, for women voting on biblical principles.
that's right. Well, let's just go to women voting, okay? So I am on a major mission for the next year and beyond, but this next year we're really, really pushing it up. And our goal is to get women registered to vote, because what we have realized, and I'm talking about this tonight actually, is the majority of God-fearing conservative women in this country not only don't vote, they aren't even registered to vote. And they tell us three things. I don't do politics don't affect me, and my husband votes. But when you think
Those
about
are three of the biggest lies I've heard
well,
lately.
I know, but when you think about who these women are, okay, when they say I don't do politics, they're looking at what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. We spend our whole entire day teaching our children not to behave that way. Why would we voluntarily engage in it? So what we help them understand is there is a difference between civic responsibility and politics. And civic responsibility is voting. And when you don't, politics is what happens. And then when they say, well, politics don't affect me, then the reason why they say that is because people are talking elected officials, they're talking at them or over them, they're not talking to them, because they're not talking about things that moms care about. And right now the issues that are heavy on moms' hearts, because all moms care first and foremost about the safety and protection of their children.
Right.
And right now their children are under assault. They're this gender confusion that's being shoved on them, comprehensive sex education where they've had condom relay races in 5th grade. What the heck? Whatever happened to reading, writing, and arithmetic? So I
Oh
go
my
and I
gosh.
I say,
Yes.
listen, you have a powerful way to change that. You don't have to show show up in mass. You don't have to march anywhere. You just voice your values with your vote. And when they say my husband votes, they're Proverbs 31, they're thinking, well, I'm taking care of my home and my family, I'm taking my kids. I don't have time to go out and vote. My husband's doing that for us. And so we tell them, listen, every election you've got one person going to represent your values. There's a minimum of 2 going out to vote against your values and everything you hold dear. How's that working for you? So our whole message is the 2 places where your voice has the greatest power and influence is in your home with your vote. And if we could just get, this number is just beyond comprehension. If we could get just 1% of the God-fearing women in this country who are not registered to vote or voting, registered and voting their values, we will win every election.
Amen.
That is how powerful our voice is. We're not voting, that's why we're losing.
That's a real eye-opener of reality that
Yeah.
needs to hit us in our hearts and in our homes. By the time all the things that are happening for evil, all the legislation that is wrong for socialism, for anti-God, and for power and control rather than freedom,
That's right.
and for the people, by the people, for the people, if we allow that to happen, if we wait till it's in our home, it's too late. It's
That's right.
coming on us like a worse cancer and a worse flood.
But we can stop it. We can stop it in 2 powerful ways. We teach the principles of liberty and virtue in our home, and then we secure them with our vote. And we can turn this around in 1 generation. It's proven because they've stolen the hearts and minds of our children in 1 generation, and now we've got college kids that don't know what gender they are. That's the power of reaching kids. And if those weren't the answers, if home, family, history, church, God, if those weren't the answers, then why would those who are destroying liberty spend all their time focusing on them?
It's very interesting. We thank you for telling us the truth. Thank you for sharing truth and exposing the sin of what's going on in our world and what we as moms can do about it. 1 person at a time. Register, vote.
Right.
Momsforamerica.us.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And anything that you also would just like to just conclude with?
Yes, I would like to tell my favorite quote. The mothers of a country mold its citizens, determine its institutions, and shape its destiny. And that is a quote by Matthew Vassar, who started Vassar Women's College because he realized our powerful influence.
Ah.
We just need to realize it too.
Oh, my goodness. It's fun talking to you, and we're going to have to do this again because we got to keep our women up to date.
Absolutely.
And now's the time. Now's the time. Women, register, vote. Capture your home. Capture your school. Do what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
One mighty woman called by God, given an assignment, you obeyed, Kimberly.
It was
Thank
scary,
God.
but I did. But you know what? I have had the time of my life. People ask me when I'm getting on the plane, "Are you going for leisure or for work?" And I said, both. I love what I do, but it's a lot of work.
So your own pain gave you the passion, okay? You're driven by the passion for the purpose to fulfill God's destiny. And you're not worn out.
No.
You may
I'm
be a
not.
little physically,
I'm a little
but you're on
physically
call.
tired, but
You're on call.
I'm on.
Thanks, Kimberly, so
Thank
much.
you.
It was nice talking to you.
Thank you.